Hi, this is Catherine Moody, and welcome to this quick video where I want to show you the key things you can do to make over what might be a dinosaur resume in order for you to get more interviews. Because that is, after all, the whole purpose of your resume. I want to show you how yours can be the resume they were hoping to see with some simple but really critical makeover tips. A lot of people talk about what your resume has to look like to make it through the ATS. What they don't talk about is what it has to look like for the next stage, because the ATS is only step one in getting to the interview. What happens next? Well, a human being, a recruiter, or sometimes a hiring manager is going to review your resume. The recruiter may be deciding whether they're even going to pass on your resume to the hiring manager. Sometimes you may make it through the ATS, but because the recruiter has better looking resumes, your resume won't even get to the hiring manager. And the hiring manager has to decide whether they want to bring you into interview. And it's all going to be based on your resume. And there's a lot of advice out there. And what I have determined is that it's way overcomplicated and more disastrous for your job search is that it's out of touch with the world today. So you may make it through the ATS with a lot of the advice that you're getting, but what happens when it gets to a human being? How do you get to stand out in a sea of a lot of resumes? Is this person happy because they found your resume and it stands out? Or are they frantic because nobody stands out? Here's a sample of a resume that was in a recent article I read, and it was portrayed as a great example of a chronological resume. And I have to tell you, I don't think that's the case. So what I did is I took the resume and I reformatted it. So here are some of the things that I did. You'll see that I moved all of the information up to this line here and took it off it being in the left-hand column. I'm not sure that every ATS is capable of reading two columns. And so some of that critical information would have been left off or would have been merged into the resume in a very unattractive way. And again, we've got human beings looking at these. And if your resume is a mess, they've got a lot of others that they can look at. Then what I put here is this little statement, because this is a little bit like a brand statement, or even better, it's a reason for the hiring company to want to see this candidate because they're the ones leading projects to streamline business operations. All of this, by the way, I got out of the other resume, but it was buried in the other resume. The other thing I did is to take some of the key experiences, again, that were on the previous resume, but I put them up here so they would be some of the first things that most resume skimmers would notice. And you'll see too that I bolded the things that I really wanted to stand out. So complex engineering environment, this phrase here, performance improvements, and then resolving bugs, providing enhancements, all things that would be of interest to a hiring manager. And what I have found is that when you bold the key items, that's where a skimmer's eye goes. They go to the bullet, but within the bullet, they will read what's in bold. And so they're going to do that fast skim first to decide if your resume is worth moving to the next step. And then in this area here, I put keywords. And I'm going to show you a comparison of this with the other resume in a second, and you'll see the other resume didn't even have a keyword section. And it's really critical if you're going to get through the ATS and give people a quick snapshot of what it is that you can do. Best way to get keywords and how to talk about your experience is to look at the postings for your ideal position, not necessarily having to tweak every resume. Once you've got a good resume, I think you're ready to go. And then what I did down here, you'll notice that I put this 3 lines that will help the recruiter and the hiring manager orient this candidate in time and space. So I talked about how many people this person led. I talked about to whom they reported, which is really important and left off most resumes. simply because people don't realize how important it is to recruiters and hiring managers. What was this person's main responsibility, and a little bit about the company that computer services delivery, how many people worked there, how big it was, how many states, was it global, was it just national, and then a little bit about the services. So now you really have a much more complete picture about this candidate than you do from the previous candidate's resume. And again, I did the same thing here. I put these in bullets as they were, but what I did is I bolded the things that I wanted a skimmer, a fast reader, to notice and pay attention to. Because sometimes they'll go through, just read the bold and make a decision to bring you in because there's enough good that they have picked up from the resume. They may not need to even read the whole resume. And here, because results are really important, and there weren't any results on the sample resume, which is another reason it's not a good profile of a resume. And so I didn't want to make too much up, but I just want to show you a different way to get a result or something that stands out to a hiring manager. So I looked up what React was, and it said that it had this really cool feature of automatic updating of software components as data changes. So you might say, well, but you know, anybody using React knows that. But it's just a bit of a different way to help this candidate be differentiated. And then instead of just starting with, I interviewed people, I put they were chosen to help build a team and that they played this key contribution role. So now let's see how this looks compared to the other one. You'll see that there is no comparison in terms of which resume a recruiter would feel comfortable passing on to a hiring manager, or a hiring manager would say, this is a very professional person that I want to interview. They just don't even look the same, do they? Now, you will perhaps say, yeah, but you know, what you revamped, now it takes up as much space as all of what we had for her before, way down to June 2011. And you're absolutely right. Here's why I don't think that matters. First of all, the admonition to have only one page. If you've got good stuff and you're telling me things that are important, I'm personally not opposed to reading 2 pages, especially because I'm only going to skim it anyway. But what I've done is I've really helped the reader understand what is unique about this person. I've made this candidate look much more like someone I want to interview than this one. This one on the left just looks like run of the mill. There's nothing distinctive. You can see that there is, but it's not pointed out. And if you don't point it out, people are simply not going to get it. So with some few reformatting steps, you can take your resume from dinosaur status to something that people will say, this is a candidate we need to interview. And that's the whole point of your resume. And then, of course, once you've got that resume, you want to do distribution services. There's one on recruiter.com. You want to get into as many recruiter databases as makes sense, and especially make sure you go to executive search firms and search firms that specialize in your type of job, your preferred industries, etc. Got a cool resume. Let's get that baby out there. And let's get it done. Don't keep tweaking it. Don't keep thinking it has to change. You got a great resume. What you want to do now is interview so that you have a fast and fabulous conclusion to your search. Take care and be well.